Welcome to Just Minding My Business Media. I'm your host, Ida Crawford. Expand your reach. Learn more at www.jmmbmediallc.com. Don't wait to buy real estate. Buy real estate and wait. Will Rogers, TV personality and investor. Today, I am so happy to bring to you Jen and Stacy Conkey. They are the founders of Remote Multifamily Investing Academy. They are real estate powerhouses with over 2 decades of investment experience and an insatiable drive to transform the multifamily education space. Their passion isn't just in doing deals, it's in elevating others to do the same. Jen, an NLP Master Practitioner and a business strategist, doesn't merely offer investment advice. She breaks down mental barriers and reconditions mindsets for unparalleled success. She's been instrumental in helping investors not only meet but shatter their real estate objectives. Stacy brings a hands-on, nuts and bolts approach to real estate training, equipping investors with the tangible tools needed to turn ambitions into closed deals. As the visionaries behind the Remote Multifamily Investing Academy, they've disrupted the status quo and developed the #1 multifamily academy for scaling in multifamily real estate, emphasizing the underestimated power of joint ventures before diving into larger syndications. They are also the proud co-authors of the book Multifamily Freedom Hacking, available on Amazon. They have been featured on reputable shows. You ladies have been all over the place. I can't wait to jump in to this conversation. So welcome, Jen and Stacy, to Just Minding My Business. We appreciate you taking time out of your, I know, busy schedule to collaborate with us today.
Oh, thanks for having us, Ida.
Thank you, Ida.
Absolutely. So I'm going to jump right in. Today, what I'm starting to see in the real estate arena is houses are kind of scarce. So, what's your thought about the current market and how real estate investors can survive?
Yes. Well, we think there's a lot of opportunity. Yes, that when you think about back in 2008, the inventory for single family homes was probably north of 3 million. And now it's less than 800,000. So there's definitely a need. And then when you think about since 2008, when that housing crisis happened, they started printing money. And when you print money, it leads to inflation. Then 2020 happened, the pandemic came, they printed more money. So inflation kept rising. And now as a result, the defense that they always deploy is to increase interest rates. And so we've seen interest rate hikes that have been maybe 13 now, I think, that are just consecutive. And it's the fastest that they've done it in 40 years. And I don't think a lot of people expected that. So what we see is some people, when the deals wouldn't pencil out about 3 years ago, got themselves into floating rate debt. And now that rate has in fact floated up unexpectedly and faster, I think in the last 40 years, faster than ever. So people are now, the financing that they had in place, they have an opportunity where it's like, that rate cap is expiring and the interest rate keeps climbing, and they're finding themselves in a situation where they're underwater. And what that means for a multifamily investor or a real estate investor is that there's opportunity, because there's about to be a lot of properties facing foreclosure in those markets. Some of them are pretty hot markets too. And so there's opportunity there to come in and get the right financing in. And I'm just excited about all the opportunity.
Yeah. Yes. And in your bio, we talked about mindset, because with anything, you got to get your head in the game. So how do you support your students to get their head in the game?
Yeah, we definitely see that mindset's about 80% of any business. As a business owner, as an entrepreneur, whether you're a leader in business or in real estate investing, it's literally all about mindset, 80% of it. And then 20% is how you do what you do. So knowing that to be true, what we've realized is that the first 90 days that folks come in and they want to learn how to do multifamily investing, they're very tied to that identity that they currently have as a subject matter expert in whatever field they're in. And it's sort of difficult for them to remember what it was like to learn something new and how challenging it probably was in the beginning. And usually what happens as human beings is we try to go back to what's familiar instead of, okay, what skill sets do I need and what worked in the past and how can I apply that to this and become a subject matter expert in this. So we really try to show them that you're perfectly human and it's okay. You've once conquered something and become an expert at it. That means that you're going to be able to do it again. And so we get them associated very strongly to why they must become a multifamily investor and why stepping into that identity is so critical. Once they identify their why, now they've got a basis to continue to go as soon as they hit a challenge. We do a lot of work around that to make sure that they understand, okay, as soon as I hit a challenge, which is going to happen, I just got to go back to why did I even start? And once I remember why I started, it's going to keep me in the game. So that's the first thing that we do.
Yes, that why is like huge whenever you start anything because it's going to get rough, it's going to get tough. So you've got to keep that why pasted in your face regularly until to get over the hurdles. And there's always hurdles. I don't care how far you get into the game. There's one hurdle after another, always. So let's talk a little bit about joint ventures versus syndications, and let's define basically what that means.
So when people are, learning about multifamily for the first time, a lot of like the education that's out there, they talk about syndication because everybody's primary concern is the money. It's always the money. Even if they have money, they don't have enough money to scale. Someone might have enough to do like one small apartment building or a couple, but no matter what, nobody has infinite money supply to be able to scale. And so they're always like, they're stuck before they even start on that big primary question. Well, how is it going to work for the money part? So when people are seeking that answer, a lot of the education that's out there is like, oh, don't worry, you're going to syndicate your deal, which basically just means you're going to bring in other investors who are going to be passive. They're just going to put their money in and you're going to do the deal with their money. And that sounds like, oh, that's very simple. But here's the reality. Syndication is governed by the Securities and Exchange Commission. So it is an actual securities offering. So when you're going to syndicate a deal, you have to get an SEC attorney, a private placement memorandum, the securities offering, a cash flow portal. It could easily be $25,000 to $30,000 on your very first deal. And that's even before you know whether the deal is going to work. So that right there, that tends to stop almost everybody dead in their tracks. And so what ends up happening is they feel like there's no way for them to successfully move into multifamily, and they just kind of like quit on their dreams and try to go figure out some other way to make it. So one of the things that Jen and I have been very passionate about trying to get out there is to teach people like there's a different way to get started in multifamily. The way that we did it, the way we teach all of our students is to start with smaller properties. Like even something that's 5 units is still an apartment building. Anything 5 or more units, it's all considered commercial financing. And if you start with something that's, let's say, 8 to 12 units, a small little building, basically the price points are lower because it's not a 100-unit building. And you can get in for fairly low, a lower amount. And with, either 1 or 2 other people, you can fund that deal and do a joint venture. So a joint venture is something where it's everybody that's in the deal is an active participant. Now, the active part might be, they might just have a small role, but they have voting rights. They're actively involved in moving the deal forward. And doing that first deal that way is infinitely easier. Infinitely easier. I'm not saying easy because there is no first deal that's easy. There's a big learning curve, but it's infinitely easier. And I think part of the reason we have such a massively high success rate in our academy, aside from the mindset work, because I already know for a fact that that's a huge component of it, but it's that we encourage our students, even if you want to get a 100-unit deal, that's cool. Get the 100-unit deal, but do a 10-unit and learn, because you will be astounded by how much you learn, even by a small 10-unit deal. Like the learning curve is steep, but gosh, when you do that first deal, you're like, wow, I didn't realize how much there was. And now you know how to do it. You've experience and confidence and credibility. That credibility with other investors who want to fund your deals in the future and brokers and lenders is what allows you to get into the next deal, which might be 20 to 30 units. And then you close that and people are like, okay, we believe you. We can see that you're doing it. Then maybe the next deal is a 50 or 60 unit. So within, a handful of stair steps, you can get to the 100 unit. And once you get above 50 units, you're probably moving into syndication. And now it's no big deal because you've already done at least 3 or 4 other deals.
Mm-hmm.
And the learning curve of syndication it's still a learning curve, but it's not that big of a learning curve at this point because you already learned how to actually be an investor and you got credibility. Anyway, so we're a huge fan because we've seen everyone who goes for syndication first, there's almost a 0% success rate. And that is such a shame.
Mm-hmm.
And if people will start with a smaller joint venture, especially, well, at least people within our academy where they have so much love, so much attention, so much help and hand holding, they close and then they close the next and the next, and then they scale into syndication. Now we have lots of students in syndication, but they started with joint venture, and that's why they have successfully owned multiple buildings, and now they're successfully doing syndication because they took a different approach, the one that we teach them.
And that makes perfectly good sense. You definitely don't want to jump into a huge deal and you really don't know what you're doing.
Exactly.
For sure. So a lot of investors are in the single family home arena. So how do you make that switch over to multifamily?
So it's funny because a lot of times it's a mindset shift for people that it is very common for people to start with rentals. They'll go from flipping to, oh, let me hold it. And then, oh, I want to do multifamily, but that's so different. But let me provide a mindset shift. It's really not, especially when you start with residential multifamily, it's literally no different. Anything that's up to 4 units is considered residential real estate, even if whether it's a 4-unit or a single family. So the financing is identical, the valuation is identical. The only thing that's different is that you have more rents coming in to cover your expenses. So it's actually way less risky, in our opinion, compared to doing a single family home where if your tenant moves out, you are covering all the expenses. And that's, that drains your bank account pretty quick. But so even if people are just starting there, that's fine. What we're trying to encourage people to do is look, between 4 units and 5 units, we're only talking 1 unit difference, but you're now working in the world of commercial investing. And, and we do both because we have students that do both. But in commercial investing, there's a lot more money to be made because the way that properties are valued is completely different. It's based on the performance of the property, like the net operating income. Mm-hmm. So if you can go in on even a small building, to begin with, and just raise the rents if they're under market, and they almost always are when we buy them, or go in and look for efficiencies where you could decrease the expense. Either way, it has this massive multiplier impact on the value of the property. And that's why there's so much more money to be made in apartments. But people sometimes get scared when they're doing single family homes, like, oh, apartments, because they look out on the street and they just see these giant complexes. But you don't have to start there, nor should you start there, because you don't want to be making mistakes on big properties, because those big mistakes are big dollar mistakes. You want to
comma mistakes.
Exactly. You want to cut your teeth on something smaller where you learn, you grow, you figure it out, and then you take all that wisdom with you into the next and the next. So the single family to getting into multifamily is a very easy transition once the investor just recognizes, oh, that's really no different up to 4 units, and then from 4 to a 5 unit, it's there's a little bit of a difference there, but it's doable. It doesn't have to be overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. And that, anything you get into, baby steps, because everything is about learning, no matter what level you're at. It's going to be a learning situation.
Yeah.
So, and you just want to be into the process, just pay attention to your process. So you ladies got it going on. So if people want to work with you, how do they do so?
The best thing that you could do is we have curated a playlist of pretty cool videos where we basically give our blueprint away. We do like for people to see those before getting started. Like go learn about us there. It's www.warriorsofwealth.com. And as you're watching those videos, if at any time you're like, okay, I've seen enough, I need to work with them, there's a button where you can book a call and work with us. And we also have an event 4 times a year. So if you ever wanted to come hang out with us in person, our event is called WowCon. It's the Warriors of Wealth Conference. We do them 4 times a year in Orlando, Florida. And you can definitely check that out too at wowcon.com.
Oh, okay. All right. So what's the age ranges of your students?
Oh my gosh, it's a big range. I'll tell you that. We have some teenagers in our academy, but for the most part, what do you think it's?
I'd say it's probably mid-30s,
Yeah.
mid-30s to 60, though we have the full spectrum down from like 15 years old because their dad wants them starting real estate. So they're in a program learning. But generally speaking, like mid-20s is usually the general younger side of our demographic. Early 70s would be like the higher end of our student base. But I'd say generally people are between like 35 and gosh, even at 65.
Yeah.
35 to 65. But honestly, it doesn't even matter because once people get in and they're part of the family, like everyone starts at the exact same place, regardless of what number they happen to be.
Yes, yes. I just wanted to ask that question because, a lot of times people are afraid to start something new, especially the older you get, the more afraid you seem to be of things. So just to know that people, no matter where you are, you can make this work.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah. Think of like one of our students, Janice, she's 61 now.
Yep.
She's 61 and she started with us 2 years ago. She now has 10 properties.
Wow.
One of which is a 96 unit. So she's got a couple of like, duplexes and things, and then has multiple stair-stepped apartment buildings. And she started with us just when she was retiring. And she's like, okay, I'm ready for what's next. And now she's built this massive cash flow machine through real estate investing. So she's having fun, staying challenged. She travels around the world. We do, she does real estate remotely, just like we teach. And yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Yes, and let's talk a little bit about real estate remotely. We know now we are a global world because of technology being able to bring people together from all corners of the earth. So how does that work with real estate?
Again,
you want me to take that? I was like, oh, you got so remote in
I learned from you.
So okay. So 20 years ago when I first started, I lived in an area that was both expensive and very competitive. And as a brand new investor, I didn't have a lot of capital. So as a brand new investor, I was very frustrated because I couldn't seem to get started because one, I couldn't even find a deal. And even if I found a deal, I couldn't afford to do it because I didn't have enough capital. And I didn't know about joint ventures back then. I ended up learning just from a mentor who lived in Canada, invested in the States, didn't travel to do it. I learned how to go and analyze markets to find markets where the cash flow actually made sense. In California, it doesn't.
No.
But in the Midwest, that's a different story. And so I learned how to analyze markets and then how to go and find and build a professional team on the ground in that market, in the markets that made sense.
Let me tell you, this floored me when I first met her almost 9 years ago, because for 12 years, I was also in California trying to figure it out and bumping my head on the wall with how much money you had to put out to make very little return. So when I first met her and I heard this, I was like, wait, what? So I know some people are probably listening going, hold on a second, what is this? So continue though, but this is where my jaw dropped and I was like, talk more, say more words.
Yeah. And it's funny because a lot of people, the big hang up for almost everybody is about, well, what happens if something breaks at the property? That's always the question. Like, what do you do about the contractors? And so the example I always like to give, because it usually helps people to shift their mindset quickly, is let's say, Ida, you're sitting there and all of a sudden you have a drip on your face and you're like, whoa, what the heck? And you're like, oh no, the roof is leaking. So what are you going to do? You're going to go out your front door and open the door and start yelling? I need a roofer. I need a roofer. No, of course not. You're going to flip open your laptop and you're going to Google a roofer in your town. And that's exact same thing that we do in our real estate investing. When I'm going to build a team in any market, I'm opening my laptop and I'm going to the various websites where those professionals advertise. So realtors, it's, realtor.com and Zillow and all the realtor websites. For contractors, there's numerous contractor websites and home inspectors, same thing. And I start calling and interviewing them. And, out of 10 contractors that I talk to, there might be only one or two that make sense for this type of property. It's no different than what I would do at home. I don't go, just because I'm there, it doesn't mean I'm physically driving around looking for those professionals. I'm still looking on my laptop and I'm still getting on the phone and talking to them. And it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So we don't physically need to go and see all these things because we have people who are professional business owners that's literally what they do for a living.
And that was what was, for me, that's a key term right there, because I was DIY doing it myself, not a professional at those things, bumping my head. So this was where I was like, oh, hold on a second. The key word is they do it for a living and I don't, which means it's more scalable. Because I had to wrap my mind around, how do I not go there? How do I not be in control? And now I've done both worlds, and this remote investing for the past 9 years is the way to go. It's way more scalable if you can bend your mind around it. But your analogies are awesome.
Well, and that's just the truth. And all of the students in our academy, that's part of why Janice and Marietta, and we have a ton of students that they travel all the time. And part of why they can is because they're not ball and chain tied to their rental properties. And unfortunately, a lot of people, when they get started in investing, they don't even know that it's an option. And so they go invest in their home market if they even can, because some people, like, you live in a place where it's too expensive. For the ones that happen to live someplace affordable, it's almost a disservice to themselves because they're stuck there now, managing the property, rehabbing the property, thinking they have to go and be there, when the reality is there's a professional home inspector who you can pay $100 to go look at the contractor's work and tell you, oh no, don't release that money because they only did 60% of it and it's not right. And even if I was the one to go see it, the heck am I looking at?
Exactly.
I'm not a professional home inspector. So it's just a mindset shift. And people are like, oh, how do you trust them? I'm like, I don't trust them. They say trust but verify, but we don't even trust. We just verify. Right. And our team knows that going in, like, here's the playing field. You do the work, we will have it verified. And once it's verified, we'll release the money immediately. And it's a relationship that allows us to do deal after deal after deal with people that are actually professionals at their trade, at their skill, which we are not. So our work gets done faster, better quality, and is scalable because we've learned to project manage using professional boots on the ground. And we can be anywhere in the world. As long as we have a cell phone signal and a Wi-Fi signal, we can manage our real estate from anywhere, which gives us total location freedom. And we just want to spread the word. We don't want people to feel tied down, and that they can live wherever they want or travel and invest where it actually makes sense instead of, where they live, which sometimes doesn't make any sense, or investing where they live where it makes sense, but then they're tied. Yeah. They're tied down. They can never leave. And now that the purpose of investing is to create freedom, not to create another job.
Right. Exactly.
Absolutely. That's where we land.
Yeah. And that was going to be my next question about property management. When you're in the multifamily arena, it just makes sense to have a professional available for whatever could go wrong. So yeah.
Yeah, you need someone who's going to market the property, take phone calls, screen people, show the property, sign the lease,
get it filled.
Like, there's a lot to do. I don't know why anybody would want to self-manage, but sometimes it's that people don't realize that they have a choice, or they're trying to save on the property management fee, which you might save a little bit, but then you really hurt yourself because you can't scale.
Right.
It's just not scalable, and you get severely burned out because that is a thankless job.
Yeah.
To do a management on your own. It's exhausting. And we end up buying a lot of our properties from landlords who didn't know there was an option. And they're just like, oh, I just don't want to deal with this anymore. So when we are analyzing the deal, we build in the property management fee so we can make sure this property makes sense, even paying a property manager, because otherwise we're not going to do it. We don't want that life for ourselves of being frustrated and getting calls in the middle of the night. No, thank you.
Right. And it makes sense, who wants that? That's like a nightmare.
Nobody, but just people don't realize that there's an option. We didn't know that right away. We had to learn all these things, but now we're like, let's make sure people know.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that. And you can build a portfolio of cash flow and have freedom and not be getting calls from tenants or dealing with all of that.
When you're first getting started, a lot of times you think about the project management and all that kind of stuff, and your mind is like, well, how much is this going to cost? So how do you work with that mindset with newbies?
Well, I think that the first thing you'll always hear me say, don't step over a quarter to pick up a dime. And what I mean by that is don't self-manage, because you're going to stay small. You're going to play small. You're going to be the one putting out the fires. You're going to be the one that's having to solve all of that. But if you just step into a position of leadership and lead property managers, and that's your team, well, now you've stepped up your game and you're still getting the work done and you're still having an eye on it and managing it, but you're leading versus doing. And it definitely just showcasing that example of, okay, you could go in and get this 10-unit property and you could self-manage. And yes, you're going to save the 6 to 10% property management fee. Fantastic. But here's what you're missing out on. You're missing out on the next 10 unit, the next 20 unit, the next 30 unit, the next 50 unit that you could have been doing more of to get more cash flow. And now on a long enough timeline, you've literally made a really dumb decision. And you're paying a dumb tax. You don't want to do that. You want to invest in a professional that can do it for you so that you can scale and go get the next property and the next property. And once they see that from a mindset perspective of how they are literally stepping over a quarter to pick up a dime, but in the moment it feels like they're picking up a buck, but it's not. On a long enough timeline, it comes back down to a dime and then eventually a penny. So just knowing that going in and doing a scalable model will build wealth faster.
So with your school, I know you talked about hand holding. I've kind of went through way back when with the real estate schools, and it was like they didn't really hold your hand. You got a whole bunch of stuff to read that looks like walk, 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 because you didn't understand. This is a whole new profession. So when you're working with your students, what is your quote unquote holding hands?
This is like the best question ever, Ida, because it's my favorite topic. And I'm going to let Stacy take it, but I do want to preface it because she experienced the same exact education that you're talking about, where you go and you get the binder. At one point, I had more binders than doors, and it's embarrassing. It's frustrating. And you're like, wow, right? And she had that very early in her career. And that's why we have an academy is she was hell-bent on disrupting the education space and doing it right and being the only academy out there that does it right. And that's what we're known for. But it's really, I'm going to let you tell your story because it's kind of
that's
why
great.
we're here.
It really is. So Ida, it was 20 years ago. It was 2003. And I invested, I do believe in paying for speed and to shorten the learning curve. I know that is always a good investment. And so I was like, I'm willing to invest in myself. And it was, as much as maybe not as much as a college tuition, but it was $40,000. It was not a small amount of money. And I was like, you know what? That's okay, because if I can learn what I need to be successful, then that was money well spent. Well, it was a horrible, it's not that it was a horrible education. It just was missing like 90% of the details. And at the time that I was getting the education, I was like, oh, wow, this is such great information. And then when I went to go implement it, I was like, wait, what? And it was just missing so many of the details. There was nobody to ask questions to. There was no mastermind, no coach, there's not even social media back then. There was nothing. And I was just, oh my gosh, it was so difficult. So every deal I did for my first, year, 2 years, I was like, oh my gosh, why didn't they say this or this or that? And there was this list of 5,000 things that nobody taught that I just had to learn through the School of Hard Knocks. And I tell Jen, I'm like, I was like, gosh darn it, if I could ever figure this out, and I was not even sure at that time whether I could, but if I figure this out, I am going to go back and I'm going to teach other people, because most people will quit. I was just so enthusiastic that my enthusiasm sucked me forward and then pulled me through. But my goodness, it was awful, and it was so hard. And so that's where the passion, it really came from. And it turns out that I actually am really good at teaching stuff, not to kids. I'm not good at teaching kids anything, but adults, my brain works in a way that takes, complex topic and breaks it into really easy A, B, C, D, E, F, G. That's how I learn. And so I have the ability to teach that. So when I started, I was a few years in, and I started going back and just trying to teach like whoever was newer than me, to save them the pain of what I went through. I started finding I have a really natural ability to do this. And I became very, very passionate about how do I reach more people. And so that's where it came from. But
I'm going to, if I can.
Yeah.
So when we first met and she shared the story with me, I had also, but for 12 years, been bumping my head on the wall, trying to figure it out. I was very excited about it. And as she was explaining to me that the education she went through, I had not gone through any education. I was absolutely trying to do it on my own, and very dizzy. I have concussions from the bumping of the wall and all the lessons, And so I was like, well, and she, at the time when we first met, she was already coaching people one-on-one. And what that looked like was she was very much just looking at their deal, reviewing everything, helping them submit the offer, like this whole thing that she did and the approach that she took. I was like, this is awesome. What would make it really awesome is if we created a community doing it, because right now you're doing it one-on-one. One of the things that I wanted was a community where I could ask questions and with peers, try to brain trust solve things, right? So after we started talking about that, I was like, what if we did one-to-many? What if we, created a community like that? That's how our academy was launched. And we ended up enrolling the first 3 people into a beta program. And in that beta program, recognizing that when I was in corporate America for 22 years while doing real estate on the side, I was really good at regionally leading teams. I had 12 buildings in the Midwest. I had to meet with those teams regularly and get their performance up and do all of these things. So I had systems for performance management. So when we went to roll the academy out, I was like, listen, the first 90 days of doing anything is the most difficult for anybody. It's a big transition period. Anytime somebody enrolls, I want to have a 90-day window where we have a point of contact that's reaching out to them every 2 weeks to check in. Hey, are you doing the coursework? Are you looking in your market? Have you built your team? Are you analyzing this many deals a week? Are you making offers? To check in along the way. And if they're not, we're going to rate these students red if they're off track, yellow if they're at risk of being off track, and green if they're hitting all the milestones. Now, in that first 90 days, anybody in the yellow, their coach is reaching out like, hey, what's going on? You haven't been coming to the calls. I see that you're not making much progress on the course. What are you stuck on? How do I help? And if they ever make it to red, then I'm calling them and trying to find out, where are you? Let's get back in here, because it's usually a mindset shift that needs to happen. And then I'll pop them back in. They come back into the program engaged and taking action. If we didn't have that and we just provided a hotline for you to call when you had a problem, you would have invested for Stacy $40,000 and received nothing. And it may not have been because of your lack of action. It may have been because you didn't have clarity, you were confused, or you were scared. But we need to give people that professional nudge to make sure that they actually are chasing their dreams. Like, we won't stand for them just giving up.
No.
It sounds like you guys are definitely on point when it comes to that. And that's what people need. I remember being in college, and the very first day, you were so pumped up. The first day of school, you getting your books. After that first week, you ready to quit. You ready to throw in the towel. You have to have people around you that see the value in you and what you're doing, and willing to nudge you along the way.
I think I did one of the big things too, because I remember when I was new, I was very scared. I was very excited, but I was also very terrified. I'm very analytical, so which is does not help. And now like it's almost like we created the program based on what we would have liked to have when we were new investors, like remembering what it was like. And when you go as a new investor and you are even making your first phone calls is absolutely terrifying to some people. It was terrifying to me, but making your first offer, like you think you're going to die of fear. It feels like a tiger is going to come out of the closet and literally bite your whole head off. You are so scared. And so when you have a coach who's been doing it for 15 years, literally on Zoom with you, you're sharing your screen and they're looking at the numbers with you. And they're like, okay, everything looks good. Now's the next step. Pull up your email and write the email to the realtor to make the offer. It's the thing that helps most people who will just get stuck right there and they will never make that step because they're just not confident in themselves. They're not confident that their numbers are right. They're afraid of making a mistake,
Yes.
just all of those things. But to have a coach who's experienced literally doing it with you, holding your hand, is what helps us as human beings take the scary step, because you're like, okay, I have that security blanket of this experienced person doing it with me. Not that the coach is profiting from it, but the coach is just with you so that okay, I haven't missed anything, and something comes up and I don't know. It's okay. My coach is literally a phone call away or a text away. It's what allows people to move through that fear into crossing the threshold of doing it and then closing that first deal. And then closing the first deal opens up all of the gates. And then, closing the second, third, fourth, 20th, it just becomes easier. But that first one is the hardest. And that's part of why we put so much emphasis and finances, as far as I know, we're the only multifamily training organization that we have so many levels of support, because our number one value is our students getting results. It's not, how do we build this up? How do we make more money? It's none of that. We put all the money just back into the academy because we are very passionate about people changing their lives. And the more people out there that are financially abundant and making money with real estate, the more they're going to give back to their communities. And it raises the vibration of the entire planet. Exactly. So we have a really big mission, and that's real estate just happens to be the vehicle that allows us to get there. But we want to provide what everyone truly needs in the beginning, because the beginning is when it's the hardest.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. You guys are just amazing. I can feel the energy, and I know everybody else is going to feel it as well. And your commitment to helping people to succeed in real estate. I mean, it's the only really commodity that you can really be free. And
Yeah.
it's really, properties never lose value, really, and it's like it's just a very lucrative place to be.
It is.
Truly.
Very
It's truly the number one wealth building mechanism that exists.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So again, how do people connect with you? How do they get involved with the Academy?
Yep. So go to www.warriorsofwealth.com. There's a curated playlist of videos. It's some of our best training. I'll give you the whole framework of our blueprint and what we do. And throughout those videos, there's an opportunity if you want to book a call with us and explore the Academy for sure.
Yes. Yeah. So
And actually, even some people, Ida, are like, oh, I'm really interested. I really love this real estate thing, but like, there's no way, I do not have the time. And I actually don't even want to learn how to do that, but I do want to invest with you. And so we do have a lot of people who they might not come into the academy to learn how to do it, but they still want to be involved in real estate. So we make that available to, we have to get to know people a little bit and make sure that it's a good fit. But we do have people that if they just don't want to learn how to do it, but they want to invest with us, we make that available as well.
We definitely help a lot of business owners that don't have enough time to put their money to work so they can keep making money.
Yeah.
wow.
And sometimes they invest with us that way. And then eventually they're like, okay, now I want to learn to do it. We're like, okay, that's fine. So we just try to be available to serve people in whatever way they need or that they want, that we can help them with.
Absolutely. And I'm telling you, you guys are a blessing. I could already feel it, to a lot of people. And I'm sure your students are very, very happy that they are with you, because I'm telling you, I know way back when, like you were talking, I forgot the big one. I think Donald Trump had one, and it was some other people that had. It was a big deal, but it was all books and really no hand holding.
Yeah. It's businesses, there's too much to it to be trying to learn out of a book. There just is.
Yes, yes. And like you said, you try to go implement something and you find that all of this information that was missing.
Yeah. I know. I
Nothing
think one of
mentioned.
the things that's really cool is you said our students are, feel like lucky they found us. And it's one, yes, that's true. But it's more than like our students, when they come in, they become part of this incredible family. Like our student base and us, like we are tight. Like they are our chosen family. And so when we do our quarterly events, our WowCon events, like, a big portion of our students come anytime they can't come every quarter sometimes, but now that we've opened it to the public and we have, so it might be like half current students and half from the public, and it gives our students an opportunity to network with more people interested in real estate. It lets people from the public come in and get to network with really incredible people, and some of them might choose to join the academy too or invest with them. It's just this amazing environment of people who are all trying to lift each other up,
Yes.
but through this real estate investing, which is just fun and kind of addictive.
Yeah.
All right, ladies, it's been a blast, of course, and we've definitely got to do this again. Maybe we can do something where we have some of your students, talk
Absolutely.
about their
Yeah.
experience with you. I know they having a blast because you guys have a nice sense of humor. You make people feel comfortable.
Well, that's
Oh,
good.
that's good.
Thank you.
Yeah, we would love to have our students come on your show
Oh, yeah.
and
They're
share their
great.
journey, and because they love to give back.
Yeah.
They're very much like us.
Yeah.
They want to share. Yeah.
So that's a date. So let's make that happen, ladies.
All right. Yeah.
Absolutely, Ida.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so thank you so much for
Thank you.
coming. Appreciate you and keep on doing what you're doing.
Awesome. Thank you,
Thank you.
Ida.